Hey everyone, thanks for joining. So, September's Global Interconnectedness report, basically looking at how the world's cooperation mechanisms are holding up. Here's what we're seeing. Not great. We're tracking patterns affecting everything from supply chains to job markets to how communities solve problems when the big institutions can't deliver. Some interesting developments, some serious bottlenecks, and honestly, a few things that'll make you wonder if we're building something better or just rearranging deck chairs. All right, let me start with the big picture. September was basically a master class in institutional breakdown. The headline event, September 6th, U.S. vetoes the UN Security Council Gaza ceasefire resolution. 14 of 15 members voted for it. So that's not just a policy disagreement, that's the primary global crisis management tool breaking down in real time. Then fast forward to September 29 through 30. Trump and Netanyahu announced this roughly 20-point peace plan. Immediate ceasefire, hostage release, pathway to a Palestinian state. Sounds ambitious, right? But Hamas hasn't responded yet, so the plan's pretty shaky. Jury's out on whether this is an actual breakthrough or just high-profile theater. What matters, though, is we're watching bilateral deals completely bypass multilateral frameworks. Some people see that as pragmatic problem-solving. I think it's a symptom of deeper institutional issues. The cynics, and they have a point, call this predicted chaos. We've known about Red Sea disruptions for months, yet here we are still reacting instead of planning ahead. The optimists think regional cooperation can fill the void. The realists worry we're fragmenting into competing blocks with no clear rules. Meanwhile, UNCTAD's projecting 0.5% maritime trade growth. That's basically flat. What that means for us: higher prices, delayed deliveries, manufacturing workers getting squeezed. This isn't abstract policy stuff. It's affecting paychecks and grocery bills. The pattern here: when global institutions fail, everyone pivots local. Whether that's better depends entirely on where you're sitting. So let's dig into the economic side of this. You know how your car repair took 3 weeks instead of 3 days? That's what we're talking about. Red Sea disruptions plus tariff uncertainties are forcing ships onto longer routes. Higher costs, slower delivery, everything cascading down the line. That 0.5% growth from UNCTAD I mentioned, historic low. Small businesses are hoarding cash and diversifying suppliers, which sounds smart until you realize it's basically a collapse of trust in global supply reliability. And here's the thing: 122 net retail store closures in the US this year. First time we've seen annual net closures. That's structural, not just a bad quarter. Now, the EU-US trade framework adds another wrinkle. Those 15% automotive tariffs that kicked in August, they're squeezing dealerships and consumers. But service sectors are actually doing well with eased cross-border quotas. Remote work's becoming this new export commodity. So you've got manufacturing workers negotiating productivity-tied wages while service professionals are seeing salary growth. Creates some interesting tensions. Critics say UNCTAD's projections don't account for how geopolitics amplifies volatility. One analyst called it optimism dressed as math, basically saying continuous rerouting could permanently crush smaller players. The counterargument is this forces necessary diversification. Efficiency's out, resilience is in, if you can afford the transition costs. Bottom line, businesses are prioritizing diversification and resilience over efficiency. New regional models are emerging, though those costs might end up hitting consumers. Let me shift to the organizations trying to manage all this. The UN system really got stress-tested with that Gaza veto. Exposed structural limitations that are forcing humanitarian organizations to completely reinvent how they operate. Trump's roughly 20-point plan from late September, hostage swaps, Hamas disarmament, international oversight, could ease some UN mediation pressures. But honestly, it also shows multilateralism is on life support. What's happening in response? NGOs are building direct community-to-community aid networks, cutting out government middlemen entirely. This is professionalizing grassroots work and creating new career paths in decentralized delivery. Though it raises the question, who's actually in charge when everyone's in charge? Regional bodies are really stepping up. African Union coordinating climate finance, ASEAN handling maritime security. These are becoming the primary venues for international cooperation, creating new diplomatic career tracks that need regional expertise. Then you've got NATO's Eastern Sentry, launched mid-September, and BRICS Plus expansion with Indonesia joining in January. Completely different visions of collective action. Some people love the diversity. More voices, better solutions adapted to local realities. The skeptics say BRICS Plus with its local currency push might just fragment finance further. Too rushed, not enough cohesion. UN purists call the veto US exceptionalism gone rogue. My concern is we're creating parallel systems with no clear rules for when they conflict. That's confusion at best, potential crisis escalation at worst. All right, let me zoom in on what I think is September's core story. Traditional UN Security Council crisis management broke down, and we're watching new systems emerge from that breakdown in real time. The veto exposed UN rigidity. 14 members agree, 1 vetoes, system freezes. So organizations are partnering directly with regional bodies now for faster, more agile responses that bypass state channels entirely. The US-Israel bilateral plan announced September 30, 60-day truce, phased withdrawal, international-led transitional governance offers this hybrid approach. Bilateral framework with multilateral elements. Success depends entirely on Hamas engagement, which is uncertain. As of this morning at 9:45, 30 September 2025, still no Hamas response, which shifts the odds. Could work brilliantly or completely sideline UN-led efforts. What this means for society. Grassroots humanitarian work is becoming more professional. New career paths emerging in decentralized crisis response. Communities that used to depend on international aid are building local resilience and cross-border networks that work independently of traditional diplomatic channels. For humanitarian professionals, this means developing new skills, regional diplomacy, alternative funding mechanisms, community-based coordination. Educational institutions are scrambling to adapt their programs. The optimistic take, this democratizes aid, cuts red tape, empowers local communities. The pessimistic take, rights groups call this veto theater. U.S. complicity in prolonging crises, turning emergencies into endless side quests with no accountability. Looking ahead, we'll know in 6 to 12 months if these hybrid approaches work, or if we're just stuck in veto loops. We're probably accelerating toward this polycentric global governance where nobody's really in charge, and regional expertise becomes a premium asset. The Trump plan is basically our test case. Now let's look at the geopolitical and security picture. Maritime security's getting creative. China establishes this nature reserve at Scarborough Shoal on September 10. Technically environmental protection, practically a sovereignty claim. Filipino fishing communities face new restrictions, shipping routes adjust, insurance premiums climb, environmental claims as geopolitical chess moves. Pretty clever, legally ambiguous, and directly hitting local seafood prices. Some call it greenwashing aggression. Escalation without firing shots. NATO's Eastern Sentry, launched September 12, shows how modern security cooperation extends beyond just military stuff into comprehensive societal resilience. Communities hosting new defense infrastructure get economic benefits through procurement contracts and infrastructure investment, but they're also adapting daily routines to enhanced security protocols. Economic wins with lifestyle trade-offs, though it risks U.S. policy whiplash if priorities shift. Climate security is becoming a major cooperation driver. Climate-vulnerable regions are building international partnerships that bypass traditional state channels, creating new funding streams for community-based resilience projects. Space cooperation is actually one bright spot. Civilian tech spillovers improving communications, navigation, weather forecasting, generating tech sector jobs, improving digital access in remote areas. One of the few genuinely win-win things this month. Moving to technology and social dynamics. The WEF's AI analysis is driving real policy responses that affect career planning and educational choices. They're highlighting this AI divide. technologically advanced regions pulling ahead while others fall behind on infrastructure and skills. The optimistic view: workers in routine task jobs get access to retraining programs, creative and interpersonal roles see increased demand. AI deployment in supply chains improves efficiency, reduces consumer costs, creates new job categories in AI-human collaboration. Small businesses access tools that used to require massive investment. The critical view: we're creating a two-tier economy where AI literacy becomes as fundamental as reading and writing. Anyone who can't adapt gets left behind. That 47% rise in AI-human roles sounds exciting, but it challenges people who aren't trained for it. The WEF's AI divide risks becoming tech colonialism if the global north sets the pace. Critics call this the north dictating terms that widen existing gaps. Digital governance is fragmenting. European privacy walls, Asian data localization, American platform freedom. Forcing tech companies to develop region-specific features. Creates compliance jobs, but genuinely fragments the internet experience depending on where you live. Cultural exchange is accelerating through Asian media influence, expanding globally. Creating language learning demand and business opportunities in cultural translation. Some see healthy diversification, others worry about cultural homogenization under new power centers. Civil societies leveraging digital platforms for cross-border advocacy, affecting local policy. New civic engagement models emerging. Exciting stuff, but raises questions about digital manipulation and echo chambers. Quick look at the sustainability angle. Climate finance is decentralizing. With Mauritania's hub approval this month, we're at 47 Green Climate Fund developing country hubs, creating local jobs and empowering community-led projects, from mangrove restoration to renewable energy microgrids. The shift from traditional North-South aid to South-South cooperation is interesting. Communities developing their own solutions for clean water, renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, then sharing horizontally rather than waiting for Western aid packages. Green tech transfer is enabling leapfrogging. Developing countries skipping dirty industrial phases, going straight to cleaner methods. Creating technical education opportunities, reducing local energy costs. The optimists see a real equity shift. The skeptics worry about greenwashing bureaucracy. Funds getting siphoned by elites instead of reaching communities that need them. We're still insufficient for actual climate mitigation. This is adaptation and resilience, which means we're accepting serious climate impacts are locked in. Still, local-driven, contextually appropriate action beats one-size-fits-all solutions from Paris or New York. Let me quickly run through the key publications shaping our understanding. These aren't just reads, they're basically our strategy guides. UNCTAD's Maritime Transport Review documents that 0.5% growth, highlighting supply chain vulnerabilities affecting product availability and pricing. Some say it underestimates resilience rebounds, but the warning's clear. ADB's latest cut to 4.7% this month reflects trade friction impacts on employment and investment in export-oriented economies. Signals broader structural shifts in global manufacturing. WEF's chief economist's outlook emphasizes AI's potential and inequality risks, informing workforce development policy across multiple countries. Critics say it overhypes while ignoring practical challenges. UNEP's climate litigation report documents the surge in environmental lawsuits, creating new legal precedents. Judicial systems becoming key venues for climate policy, empowering if slow. OECD's interim outlook warns of stalling disinflation and persistent uncertainty affecting business investment and household spending. Crucial insights for navigating these transitions. Together, these give us essential frameworks for understanding how macro trends translate to real impacts. So, wrapping up with the key trends and what to watch. 3 megatrends reshaping everything. First, institutional fragmentation driving regional cooperation models. Traditional multilateral institutions weakening, regional bodies strengthening. Requires new professional skills, cultural competency, regional expertise, language abilities. Educational institutions adapting programs for multi-actor environments where regional knowledge gives you competitive advantages. Second, technological acceleration creating both opportunities and inequalities. AI diffusion accelerating, creating urgent workforce adaptation needs. Next few years will see expanded retraining programs, but there'll be winners and losers in this transition. Third, climate imperatives forcing new international collaboration, prioritizing local implementation. Top-down climate action giving way to bottom-up, community-driven approaches. Might be more effective, but also more fragmented and harder to coordinate. Economic resilience strategy is shifting from global efficiency to supply chain diversification and local resilience. Creating new business models focused on regional production and consumption, generating demand for professionals who can navigate multiple regulatory environments and cultural contexts. Next month's watch items: humanitarian access in Gaza as that peace plan rolls out or collapses, supply chain adaptation strategies, Green Climate Fund hub operationalization, continued regional cooperation evolution. These will show whether global governance is adapting or just fracturing further. The key question: how does this shape our next move? All right, so bottom line. At 9:45 this morning, we're at a real inflection point. September 2025 marks a pivot. We're not tweaking the existing system. We're watching it fracture while new systems emerge from the cracks. The institutions built in 1945 don't map to 2025 realities. Is this better or worse? Depends on your position. Strong regional bloc with good leadership might work out great. Weak state getting squeezed between rival clusters, pretty terrifying. The transition from global to regional cooperation structures is probably inevitable. But we're doing this without a clear plan, creating significant uncertainty and risk. For anyone in any field touching international work, which is increasingly most of us, the key skill is adaptability. Operating effectively across multiple cooperation frameworks at once. Cultural competency, regional expertise, these are becoming premium assets. The next few years determine whether we're building a more resilient polycentric system or accelerating fragmentation into rival clusters. I genuinely don't know which way this tips. This is Kaede signing off.